Shalom, welcome to Tactically Torah. I am Heath Hayes. Just got out of the gym. It's a brisk 28 degrees this morning at 7 a.m. 7:17 actually. Anyways, okay, so we just had Sukkot, right? And something that keeps running through my mind is, and we read it for the Torah portion on Shabbat, and that was loving commitment, or lovingly committed. And what we read within that Torah portion was Exodus chapter 34. And what's happening there is Moses, he was up on the mountain and he was receiving the tablets of the commands from the Most High. And essentially, Moses, comes down the mountain, and I'll just read chapter 34, starting in verse 4. He says, "And he cut 2 tablets of stone like the first ones. Then Moshe rose early in the morning and went up Mount Sinai as Yahweh had commanded him, and he took 2 tablets of stone in his hand. And Yahweh came down in the cloud and stood with him there, and proclaimed the name Yahweh. And Yahweh passed before him, and proclaimed, Yahweh, Yahweh, and El, compassionate and showing favor, patient and great in loving commitment and truth, watching over loving commitment for thousands, forgiving crookedness and transgression and sin, but by no means leaving unpunished, visiting the crookedness of the fathers upon the children and the children's children, to the 3rd and the 4th generation." That's strong. See, we have to suffer the ramifications of our actions, right? However, the Father is truly lovingly committed to us, and I want you to break that down, the idea of being lovingly committed. I'm not just committed to my wife. I am lovingly committed to my wife, right? Love requires action. It's not a feeling. It's a choice. So when you take that, you break it down, when you're committed, you're not quitting. You hold fast to it. You're holding on. You're not letting go. You can't let go. And the Father is lovingly committed to us. If you flip over to Psalms, man, the words lovingly committed are all over the book of Psalms, if I can find it. But there's one chapter here, chapter 136, Psalms 136. "Give thanks to Yahweh, for he is good, for his loving commitment is everlasting. Give thanks to the Elohim of mighty ones, for his loving commitment is everlasting. Give thanks to the Master of masters, for his loving commitment is everlasting. To him who alone does great wonders, for his loving commitment is everlasting. To him who by wisdom made the heavens, for his loving commitment is everlasting. To him who spread the earth on the waters, for his loving commitment is everlasting. To him who made great lights, for his loving commitment is everlasting. The sun to rule by day, for his loving commitment is everlasting. The moon and the stars to rule by night, for his loving commitment is everlasting. To him who struck Mitzrayim in their firstborn, for his loving commitment is everlasting. And brought out Israel, from their midst, for his loving commitment is everlasting. With a strong hand and with an outstretched arm, for his loving commitment is everlasting. To him who split apart the sea of reeds, for his loving commitment is everlasting. And made Israel pass through the midst of it, for his loving commitment is everlasting. But shook off Pharaoh and his army in the sea of reeds, for his loving commitment is everlasting. To him who led his people through the wilderness, for his loving commitment is everlasting. To him who struck the great sovereigns, for his loving commitment is everlasting. And killed the mighty sovereigns, for his loving commitment is everlasting. Even Sihon, sovereign of the Amorites, for his loving commitment is everlasting. And Og, sovereign of Bashan, for his loving commitment is everlasting. And gave their land as an inheritance, for his loving commitment is everlasting. An inheritance to Israel, his servant, for his loving commitment is everlasting. Who remembered us in our humiliation, for his loving commitment is everlasting. And rescued us from our adversaries, for his loving commitment is everlasting. Who gives food to all flesh, for his loving commitment is everlasting. Give thanks to the El of the heavens, for his loving commitment is everlasting. Give thanks. He's lovingly committed to us. And all that we do, all the ways where we go wrong, regardless, he could tell me to go left and I go right, and he's still lovingly committed to me. But the other side of that is we've got to lean into his loving commitment and be lovingly committed to him and his ways. Lovingly committed. It's all over the place. Right here. Like I literally just looked down Psalm 138, 2 chapters later. I bow myself toward your set-apart Hekal, and give thanks to your name for your loving commitment and for your truth. For you have made great your word, your name above all. Loving commitment. Verse 8. Yahweh does perfect for me. O Yahweh, your loving commitment is everlasting. Do not forsake the work of your hands. Are we not the work of his hands? Like, man, David presses into that. Presses into the loving commitment of the Father. He knows that the Father is committed to him. Man, like, how do you even do that? How do you press in so hard to the Most High that you just know that there's a level of commitment that you can't get past? Psalm 108 verse 4, and I'm just like looking through here like your loving commitment is great above the heavens, and your truth reaches to the clouds. And that's interesting, because the Father, like, okay, 107 verse 43, who is wise? Let him observe these matters. Let them understand the loving commitments of Yahweh. If you are wise, understand and observe the loving commitment of Yahweh in all his ways. See how he is lovingly committed to us. It's interesting. For his loving commitment is everlasting. Psalm 107, first verse. Let them give thanks to Yahweh for his loving commitment and his wonders to the children of men. For he has satisfied a longing being and has filled the hungry being with goodness. He is lovingly committed. Guys, I really don't have much more than that. It's just something that's been running through me all Sukkot, that every time I open the Bible, I see loving commitment. Every time I read his word, he is lovingly committed to me. So what does that mean for you? Press into that. Press into his loving commitment. He wants to show himself to you. He wants to prove himself to you that he is, incorrect context with proving, because the Father does not need to prove anything. I think the idea is he wants to prove himself lovingly committed to you. Establish a baseline level of trust. See, because within that loving commitment, that's the context with which we see in Revelation the idea of maintaining the testimony of Yeshua and guarding to keep his commands. We are lovingly committed to him and his ways because he is lovingly committed to us. For the greatest of all these is love. In the end is faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love, right? I don't know. Just some thoughts. Bless you. Shalom.